Such a big impact on people. A lot of guitar players come up to me and say, after I heard that Alive record, and
October 16th, 2025, the rock world stopped. Ace Frehley, the legendary Spaceman of KISS, the guitarist who made millions of kids pick up their first guitar, was gone at 74. Within hours, tributes flooded social media. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley released heartfelt statements. Criss shared old photos. Fans across the globe mourned. Rock stars from Slash to Tom Morello paid their respects. His daughter Monique posted tearful messages. His legal wife Jeanette stood by his side in those final moments. But there was one person, one very important person, who said absolutely nothing. The woman who spent 11 years of her life with Ace, who called herself his wife, who defended him publicly against his bandmates, who made explosive allegations that shook the foundation of KISS itself. Rachael Gordon remained completely, utterly silent.
Called his wife, told I was his wife, I was proposed to, I wore his ring, and I was called Mrs. Frehley for 12 years straight.
Not a single post, not one tribute, not even a brief acknowledgement that the man she once loved had passed away. For someone who had been so vocal, so present in Ace's life for over a decade, the silence was deafening. And that silence? It tells us everything we suspected all along about their relationship. This isn't just a story about a rock star and his girlfriend. This is a story about manipulation, accusations, legal warfare, and a relationship so toxic that even death couldn't break the silence that followed. What really happened between Ace Frehley and Rachael Gordon?
Yeah,
I didn't know what to think. I felt sorry for him when I met him. I loved him. I felt sorry for him. I had empathy and sympathy for him. And when I looked into his eyes, I felt like I wanted to help him.
Oh. Why has she said nothing about his passing? And what does her silence reveal about the truth we all suspected, but nobody wanted to say out loud? Before the lawsuits, before the restraining orders, before the public mudslinging and the bitter end, there was actually a love story. Or at least that's what it looked like from the outside. Ace Frehley met Rachael Gordon sometime around 2008.
Arms to sleep all the time because he cried constantly.
What?
Constantly. It's like he doesn't cry when he hurts somebody, but he cries when he watches a movie or something. He cries when he watches real people in movies that have real empathy.
During a period when the legendary guitarist was trying to rebuild his life. He'd left KISS for the second time in 2002, struggled with substance issues for years, and was working on getting sober and staying that way. Enter Rachael Gordon. She wasn't from the music industry. She wasn't a groupie chasing fame. She seemed like a regular person who genuinely cared about Ace. And for a man who'd spent decades surrounded by the chaos of rock and roll, maybe that's exactly what he needed. The relationship moved fast. Within months, they were inseparable. Ace would later describe those early years as some of the happiest of his life. They lived together in Southern California, splitting time between Los Angeles and eventually settling in an upscale home in Rancho Santa Fe, near San Diego. Rachael became more than just his girlfriend. She became his partner, his companion, his support system. She accompanied him to concerts, industry events, fan meet and greets. She was there when he recorded his solo albums, when he did interviews, when he reconnected with old friends from the music world. To everyone watching, they seemed like the real deal. Ace even started referring to Rachael as his wife in interviews and on social media. Now here's where things get complicated. Ace was still legally married to his first wife, Jeanette Trerotola. They tied the knot back in 1976, during the height of KISS's fame, and had a daughter together, Monique, born in 1980. The marriage had fallen apart years earlier, probably sometime in the late 1980s or early 1990s, but they never officially divorced. In a 2018 interview, Ace explained why. He said Jeanette's health hadn't been good, and he wasn't in a position to force a divorce on her. He promised that eventually he'd marry Rachael, but that would have to wait. So for 11 years, Ace and Rachael lived in this strange limbo. They were together, committed, acting like a married couple, but there was no legal bond, no marriage certificate, no shared assets, nothing that would protect either of them if things went south. And oh boy, were things about to go south. During those 11 years together, Rachael became deeply embedded in Ace's world. She managed aspects of his daily life, helped coordinate his schedule, dealt with his business affairs. Ace later claimed she controlled their finances, deciding what got paid and when. Whether that was true or whether Ace simply trusted her to handle things because he wanted to focus on music, we'll probably never know the full truth. What we do know is that by 2019, the fairy tale was over. But before we get to the dramatic ending, we need to talk about what happened in early 2019. Because that's when Rachael Gordon went from being Ace Frehley's quiet girlfriend to making headlines that would shake KISS to its core. February 2019. Gene Simmons had just done an interview where he made some comments about Ace being unreliable, suggesting that KISS couldn't depend on him to show up and perform consistently. It wasn't the first time Gene had thrown shade at his former bandmate, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time, Ace had had enough. He fired back hard, posting a statement on social media that dropped a bomb nobody saw coming. Ace accused Gene Simmons of being a sex addict who was being sued by multiple women. Then came the really explosive part. Ace claimed that Gene had groped Rachael, his wife, and propositioned her at the Capitol Records building in Los Angeles, right behind Ace's back. He said Rachael had been planning to pursue legal action against Gene, but Ace told her to call it off. The rock world went nuts. This wasn't just typical KISS drama, this was a serious accusation of misconduct. Rachael quickly backed up Ace's claims. In interviews and on social media, she described multiple incidents where Gene had been inappropriate with her. She said Gene had touched her, whispered things in her ear, propositioned her several times. She described one particular incident at the Capitol Records building where Ace had been asked to spend an entire day helping Gene with his vault project, some kind of memorabilia thing Gene was selling. According to Rachael, Gene kept making comments to her throughout the day. When she walked in, he allegedly said something like, "Can I get you a cocktail or a back rub or something?" She claimed Gene never had any problem coming onto her, and that he was getting worse and worse over time. But Rachael didn't stop there. In a Facebook conversation with a friend that got screenshotted and spread across the internet, she made an even more outrageous claim. She said that KISS had tried to have Ace killed back in the 1970s. According to Rachael, they tried sending him to a so-called private party in the Bahamas, implying it was some kind of setup. She added that Ace was very sober now and knew what was happening, that he could see things clearly. The comment ended with her saying Ace didn't need a chain of lowbrow restaurants. A dig at Gene's various business ventures, because Ace plays the guitar, that's what he does. Now let's be real for a second. The claim that KISS tried to have Ace killed sounds absolutely insane. Rachael never provided any evidence, never explained who was supposed to be at this private party, never clarified why the band would want their lead guitarist dead. It sounds like conspiracy theory nonsense. The kind of wild accusation someone makes when they're angry and want to hurt somebody. But here's what matters. Rachael said it publicly, and Ace didn't contradict her. In fact, by accusing Gene of groping Rachael, Ace was essentially backing her up, supporting her version of events, validating her claims. The KISS camp initially stayed quiet. Gene and Paul didn't immediately respond to the groping allegations. There was no statement addressing the supposed murder plot from the 1970s. But behind the scenes, things were clearly falling apart. Whatever relationship still existed between Ace and his former bandmates was now completely destroyed. And whatever was happening between Ace and Rachael, well, that was about to implode too. Because just a few months after these explosive accusations, everything fell apart in the most dramatic way possible. July 12, 2019. It was a Friday night in Rancho Santa Fe. Rachael Gordon was at home, probably thinking it was just another regular evening. Then Ace Frehley showed up, and nothing would ever be the same. According to Rachael's account, which she detailed in court documents when she filed for a restraining order, Ace arrived at their home with 2 bodyguards and his daughter Monique. But he wasn't there for a family visit. He was there to grab his stuff and get out. And he didn't give Rachael any warning. Rachael said she watched in shock as Ace and the bodyguards started taking his guitars off the walls, grabbing his gold records, packing up his belongings. She kept asking what was happening, where was he going, what was wrong. She said Ace wouldn't even look at her. He refused to speak to her. The bodyguards were doing all the work while Ace just supervised the removal of his property. Then, according to Rachael, things got threatening. She claimed the female bodyguard got right up in her face, fist raised, and told her that if she said one word, she was going down. The bodyguard allegedly said, "I'm going to lay you out right now," while gritting her teeth inches from Rachael's face. Rachael said Monique, Ace's daughter, also got involved, screaming at her that she was a skank and that the family would kill her. The scene Rachael described sounds absolutely terrifying. She said she was left in shock, afraid, filled with anxiety, paralyzed with fear. Within days, she went to court and filed for a temporary restraining order against Ace. In her filing, she made additional claims. She said Ace controlled all of their finances. She argued that she needed money for rent, for bills, for moving expenses, for car costs. She painted a picture of a woman who had given 11 years of her life to a man who then cut her off completely, leaving her with nothing. But Ace's legal team told a completely different story. His attorney, Jennifer Goldman, said the whole thing was planned. The couple had broken up. Ace went to the house specifically to collect his property, his guitars and gold records that he'd accumulated over decades of making music. According to Goldman, nothing inappropriate happened. She called Rachael's allegations baseless, unfounded, unwarranted, false. She said Rachael got upset and used the judicial system to file a restraining order out of anger, not because she was actually in danger. The attorney promised they would prove all of this at the hearing. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. When the case went before San Diego North County Judge Harry Pawazek, the restraining order was denied. The judge didn't find Rachael's claims credible enough to grant the protection she was seeking. After the ruling, Ace told reporters he felt vindicated. He said he never laid a hand on Rachael, and that she admitted as much in her deposition. He even said he hoped she'd find someone else and move on with her life, and that he had no bad feelings about her. They'd had some good times, but those times had passed. Rachael, however, saw things differently. Despite losing the restraining order case, she told NBC San Diego that she felt like she'd won anyway. She claimed that legally, Ace couldn't come around anymore. She said she had a lot of power now that she could work with and plan to work with. It was a strange thing to say after losing in court, but it suggested that this fight was far from over. And sure enough, the legal warfare was just beginning. After the restraining order was denied in early 2020, most people probably thought the Ace and Rachael drama was done. They'd broken up, gone to court. The judge ruled in Ace's favor. Case closed, time to move on. But Rachael Gordon wasn't done. Not even close. What followed was years of legal battles, public accusations, and a level of bitterness that shocked even longtime KISS fans who were used to drama. Over the next several years, Ace couldn't seem to do an interview without bringing up Rachael. And when he did mention her, he didn't hold back. He called her his psycho girlfriend. He referred to her as that crazy broad Rachael. In a 2023 interview with Eddie Trump, Ace went into detail about their relationship and breakup. He said he'd been living in San Diego with this psycho girlfriend, talking about Rachael. He mentioned that he'd gotten an order of protection against her for 3 years. Then he made some really harsh claims. According to Ace, Rachael had taken all her Facebook quotes down. The ones where she'd made those wild accusations about Gene Simmons and KISS trying to have Ace killed. Ace suggested she might be going to jail. He implied she'd probably taken a handful of pills and got loaded before posting all that stuff online. He said he called KISS's attorney and asked why they weren't going after her for breaking the non-disclosure agreement. The venom in Ace's words was obvious. This wasn't just about a relationship that didn't work out. This was personal, deep, angry. For someone who claimed to have no bad feelings, Ace sure spent a lot of time trashing his ex. But here's where things get interesting. If you go back and look at Rachael Gordon's social media, something weird happened on January 1st, 2022. She just stopped. No more posts, no more comments, no more activity. For someone who'd been fairly active online, who'd made all those public accusations, who'd been vocal about her relationship with Ace, the sudden silence was strange. Some fans speculated that Ace had paid her off, that there was some kind of settlement with a gag order attached. Others wondered if KISS's legal team had gotten involved, threatening her with lawsuits if she kept talking. Nobody knew for sure, but the silence was notable. The legal battles continued behind the scenes, though. In October 2024, just a year before Ace's death, there was a lawsuit that finally went to trial. Rachael had been suing Ace for financial support, essentially asking for palimony, money she believed she was owed after spending 11 years with him. She argued that she'd given up her life to be with Ace, that she'd managed his affairs, that she deserved compensation. The case dragged on for years, costing both sides a fortune in legal fees. When it finally reached resolution in October 2024, Ace won. Rachael lost her support lawsuit. She wasn't getting a dime. Photos from outside the courthouse showed Ace with his legal team, everyone smiling, celebrating the victory. For Ace, it must have felt like vindication after years of accusations and legal drama. He'd proven in court twice now that Rachael's claims didn't hold water. First, the restraining order got denied. Now the palimony suit got thrown out. In Ace's mind, and in the eyes of the law, he'd done nothing wrong. But the damage was already done. These weren't two people who'd simply grown apart and gone their separate ways. This was scorched earth, mutual destruction, a relationship so toxic that even years after it ended, they were still fighting in court. And through it all, Rachael Gordon stayed silent online. No posts, no updates, no comments. That silence, which began in January 2022, would continue all the way through 2025, including when Ace died, September 25, 2025. Ace Frehley was working in his home studio, doing what he loved, making music. At 74 years old, he was still touring, still recording, still living the rock and roll dream. Then he fell. The details aren't entirely clear, but what we know is that Ace took a bad fall in his studio, bad enough that he had to be rushed to the hospital. Initially, it seemed like maybe he'd be okay. His team announced he'd be canceling some upcoming tour dates due to the accident, but the tone wasn't overly alarming. Fans sent well wishes, hoping their hero would recover quickly. But behind the scenes, things were much worse than anyone knew. The fall had caused bleeding in Ace's brain. By early October, his condition had deteriorated significantly. On October 6th, his team posted an update saying he was canceling the rest of his 2025 tour dates due to ongoing medical issues. The wording was vague, but fans started to worry. This didn't sound like a simple injury. Then, on October 16th, TMZ broke the devastating news. Ace Frehley had been placed on life support. The brain bleeding was severe. His family was facing the impossible decision of whether to remove him from the ventilator. Hours later, they made that heartbreaking choice. Ace Frehley, the spaceman, the kid from the Bronx who became a guitar god, was gone. The tributes came immediately. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, despite all the years of fighting and bad blood, released a joint statement expressing their devastation. They called Ace an essential and irreplaceable rock soldier during the most formative chapters of KISS. They said he would always be part of the band's legacy. Criss, the original drummer, posted on social media that he was shocked, calling Ace his friend and saying he loved him. Ace's daughter Monique shared emotional posts about losing her father. His legal wife Jeanette, the woman he'd married in 1976 and never divorced, was listed among the survivors in his obituary. She'd been there in his final moments, along with his brother Charles and sister Nancy. Fans around the world mourned. Younger guitarists who'd been inspired by Ace posted their tributes. Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine called Ace his first guitar hero. Members of Anthrax, Pearl Jam, Metallica, Pantera all spoke about how Ace had influenced their music. The outpouring of love was massive. Everybody, it seemed, wanted to honor the spaceman, to acknowledge what he'd meant to rock and roll, to say goodbye to a legend. Everybody except one person. Rachael Gordon, the woman who'd spent 11 years with Ace, who'd called him her husband, who defended him against Gene Simmons, who'd been by his side through his struggles with sobriety and his attempts to rebuild his career, said absolutely nothing. No Instagram post, no Facebook tribute, no tweet. No statement to the press. Nothing. For someone who'd been so present in Ace's life for over a decade, the silence was shocking. Fans noticed immediately. On social media, people started asking questions. Where's Rachael? Why hasn't she said anything? Did something happen between them that we don't know about? Some fans defended her, saying maybe she was grieving privately. Maybe she didn't owe the public a statement. But others pointed out that this wasn't just about public versus private grief. This was about a complete absence of acknowledgement that Ace had died, not even a simple rest in peace. And that silence spoke volumes. So why didn't Rachael Gordon say anything when Ace Frehley died? To understand that, we need to look at what actually happened to their relationship and what it became by the end. This wasn't a love story that faded naturally. This wasn't two people who grew apart and remained friends. This was a relationship that ended in restraining orders, lawsuits, public insults, and years of legal warfare. By the time Ace died in October 2025, he and Rachael hadn't been together for over 6 years. They hadn't spoken, as far as anyone knows, since that dramatic night in July 2019 when he showed up with bodyguards to collect his belongings. But more than that, consider what happened in the years after their breakup. Ace repeatedly called Rachael psycho and crazy in interviews. He suggested she was on pills, unstable, vindictive. He celebrated when he won the lawsuit against her in October 2024. Rachael, meanwhile, had gone completely silent online since January 2022. No posts, no activity, nothing. That silence could mean a few things. Maybe there was a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement attached. Maybe KISS's lawyers got involved and threatened legal action if she kept talking. Maybe she simply decided that speaking publicly about Ace would only bring more pain and more legal trouble. Whatever the reason, by 2022, Rachael Gordon had effectively erased herself from the narrative of Ace Frehley's life. And here's the thing that really reveals the truth: Ace's family erased her too. When Ace died, the official statement from his family listed his survivors: Jeanette, his legal wife; Monique, his daughter; Charles, his brother; Nancy, his sister; various nieces, nephews, and extended relatives. But no mention of Rachael Gordon, not even a footnote. Not even an acknowledgement that she'd existed in his life. In the eyes of Ace's family, Rachael wasn't worth mentioning. And given everything that had happened, the accusations, the lawsuits, the drama, can you really blame them? Think about it from the family's perspective. This was a woman who'd accused Simmons of groping her and claimed KISS tried to murder Ace in the 1970s. This was a woman who'd filed a restraining order that got denied. This was a woman who'd sued Ace for money and lost. This was a woman Ace himself called psycho and crazy. Why would his family want her anywhere near his memory? Why would they include her in the list of people mourning his loss? They wouldn't, and they didn't. So when Ace died, Rachael found herself in a position where she genuinely had nothing to say. What could she say? That she was sad? After years of legal battles and public insults? That she had fond memories? After Ace spent interviews trashing her character? That she'd loved him? When his family didn't even acknowledge her existence in their statement? The silence wasn't mysterious, it wasn't suspicious. It was inevitable. It was the only possible outcome of a relationship that had turned so toxic, so bitter, so full of mutual resentment that even death couldn't bridge that gap. Rachael's silence confirmed what many people had suspected all along. Despite the 11 years together, despite Ace calling her his wife, despite the public appearances and the social media posts showing them happy, their relationship was never what it appeared to be. It was complicated, probably unhealthy, possibly manipulative on one or both sides, and ultimately doomed. There's also the legal angle to consider. If Rachael had signed any kind of settlement agreement or NDA after losing her lawsuit in 2024, speaking publicly about Ace, even to offer condolences, might have violated those terms. She could have faced legal consequences for breaking her silence. So maybe the smart move, the safe move, was to say nothing at all. Let his family mourn. Let his fans pay tribute. Let the rock world celebrate his legacy. And just stay quiet. Stay out of it. Stay removed from the whole thing. Because anything she said would have been picked apart, criticized, questioned. People would have accused her of trying to insert herself back into the narrative. They would have called her opportunistic, attention-seeking, fake. So she said nothing. And in a way, that was the most honest thing she could have done. Ace Frehley left behind an incredible legacy. He was one of the most influential rock guitarists of all time. He helped create the sound and image of KISS, one of the biggest bands in history. He inspired countless musicians to pick up a guitar. His solos, his stage presence, his smoking guitar effects, his spaceman persona, all of it became iconic. Millions of fans around the world loved him. His music will live forever. That's what matters. That's what we should remember. But his personal life, especially those final years, was marked by conflict and pain that had nothing to do with music. The relationship between Ace Frehley and Rachael Gordon tells us something important about the difference between public image and private reality. For 11 years, they presented themselves as a devoted couple. He called her his wife. She stood by him through his struggles. They looked happy in photos. But beneath that surface was a relationship that was falling apart, that would end in restraining orders and lawsuits and years of bitterness. When Ace died, Rachael's silence revealed the truth. Whatever they'd had together, whatever connection they'd shared, it was gone long before he took that fatal fall in his studio. Her silence wasn't a mystery that needed solving. It was simply the final chapter of a relationship that had destroyed itself years earlier. And maybe that's the saddest part of this whole story. Ace Frehley spent his last years fighting legal battles with the woman he'd once called his wife, instead of focusing on what he loved most, making music. He spent those years defending himself against accusations, paying lawyers, winning court cases just to prove he didn't owe her anything. That's not how a rock legend should spend his final chapter, but that's what happened. And when he died, the woman at the center of all that drama couldn't even bring herself to say goodbye. Because sometimes relationships become so toxic, so damaged, that not even death can heal those wounds. Rachael Gordon's silence after Ace Frehley's death confirmed what we all suspected, but maybe didn't want to admit. Their relationship, for all its years and all its public declarations of love, was never the fairy tale it appeared to be. It was complicated, messy, ultimately destructive, and when it ended so completely that there was nothing left to say. Not even goodbye. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And in this case, Rachael Gordon's silence told us everything we needed to know about what really happened between her and the spaceman. The love was gone, if it had ever truly been there at all, and all that remained was the ghost of a relationship that both of them probably wished they could